We turn our attention now to reported advancements in the economics around BEE. That's as a spike has been seen in assets managed by black-owned asset managers since 2009. To expand on this, we are joined by the CEO at 274, Fatima Vawda. Thank you so much for your time, Fatima. Clearly, between 2009 and 2022, this is a progress that should be welcomed. Talk us through the findings of this particular report that is showing this advancement.
Absolutely. Good morning to everyone watching. The South African financial services sector plays a very critical role in financial intermediation between borrowers and savers. And post-democracy, what we found was that the concentration of the financial sector between banks and life insurance companies and asset managers were in the hands of a very few concentrated shareholders. And the diversification of the financial services sector, particularly when it comes to money management, and that's asset management, was very concentrated. So since 2009, we started monitoring progress in transformation of the asset management industry. And what our data shows you is that in 2009, there were around 10 black-owned asset management firms managing around 90 billion rands in assets. Today, that has grown to 1.3 trillion rands, representing around 61 black-owned asset management firms. So we've seen the rise of many new independent black-owned asset management firms emerge within the South African sector. But what we've also seen is that incumbent firms that existed pre-democracy are also beginning to feel the pressure that they've got to transform. So they've slowly begun to move in the right direction. And this, I call it the race to transform. We're seeing the energy in the sector, and we're seeing a lot of incumbent firms taking the steps to transform alongside newly established independent asset management firms.
I think the greater advantage really is the change within what representation then looks like in this particular space. Maybe let's paint a picture really of what the financial sector is at least turning towards when it comes to a picture of equality in South Africa.
Sure. So what we are beginning to see, I mean, if we measure transformation, we measure it at several different levels. Yes, ownership is one, but an area that our sector has really struggled with is the area of management control. So even in the big firms, we've seen, the integration of diversity, equity, and inclusion across businesses. However, right at the top, when it comes to middle management and line management, etc., those positions have still not moved. So one of the pressures that the industry is facing now outside of the financial sector code is the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, which is currently sitting with the President for signature, which will basically then mean that sectoral targets could be implemented, which requires then the financial services sector to have its own employment equity targets, and that will really accelerate that transition into the management roles and positions for black people and women. Because gender equality and gender lens investing is taking center stage within our sector in the pensions environment and the savings environment as well.
Oh, absolutely. Having mentioned that bill and particularly looking at regulation in this regard, what role is there then for the likes of the FSCA, and really what role have they played in getting to this point?
Yes, so the FSCA historically has not had the powers to play an enforcement role when it comes to BEE and transformation. However, in February this year, the FSCA, that is the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, they issued a paper proposing several steps on the role that they will play in transforming the financial services industry. And following the gazetting of the Coffee Act, as well as the changes to the Financial Sector Regulation Act, once those acts come into play, it basically provides the regulator, the FSCA, with certain powers. And those powers will then allow them to play a more supervisory and enforcement role when it comes to transformation of the financial services sector. So a couple of things they've mentioned in that draft paper was one, the minimum BBBE level within the financial services sector. Companies should move towards is a level 4. Companies should have transformation policies in place that are regularly monitored. They should have roadmaps in place and timeframes within which they will meet certain thresholds and milestones. So that is a massive change that is coming into play, and we expect that to come into play fairly imminently as expectations for the gazetting of the Coffee Act comes into play.
Thank you so much for your insights. That is Fatima Vawda, CEO at 27/4, talking to us about these advancements and developments around BEE.